Part 1. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 1. On the sun-drenched Earth, there is a pond of stagnant water. This pond of stagnant water is full of stench, and I don't know how many years it has been there. There were pieces of garbage floating on the water, and some rat carcasses, rotting and fermenting on the surface of the pond. It stinks. This water smells so bad. A passerby walked by the pond and smelled the smell in the pond. He couldn't help but yelled and then spat into the pond. You vomit even though it stinks, you are so unhygienic. The passerby didn't notice, and couldn't possibly notice, that on the surface of the stagnant water, there was a small worm with a pair of big eyes, floating in the water and throwing a tantrum at him. Jia Yan carefully controlled his current body to avoid the spittle and stars spitted out by the man. With his current body, he might be able to crush it to death with just this spit. He howled with great sadness in his mind. Other people go back to the past and laugh at the storm, or travel to other worlds to become strong men who control the world, but I am so good, how come I am reborn as a little child? That's right. Now Jia Yan is just a little insect floating on the water, a worm. Maybe some people don't know what a worm is, but everyone on Earth will definitely know what this bug looks like when it grows up. Because they are the color-changing blood-sucking insects that everyone talks about, mosquitoes. The world in front of me is completely different. How bad is my eyesight? I can't even see clearly dozens of meters away. It makes me dizzy. Jia Yan controlled his body to float on the water, his little body swaying as if he was drunk. The larva has a pair of compound eyes. Insect compound eyes have a completely different structure from human eyes, and compound eyes are composed of many smaller eyes. Jia Yan, a human soul, is completely unable to adapt to the current eyes. There are also heat sensors and infrared sensors. These sensors are so disgusting. And if I don't want them, I'm almost going to have a schizophrenia. Jia Yan controlled his body to sway and bounce twice, but fell into the pond. Oh my god. I don't know how to swim. This larva kept flapping in the water, causing the plankton around it to stagger and drift with the current. Hey, it seems that swimming is not that difficult. After 2 splashes, Jia Yan found that his body was not that difficult to control, and he did not even feel much discomfort in the water. The bird stopped flapping and stretched its body in the water, trying to learn to snorkel. Swimming is a natural habit of every larvae. In just a few moments, Jia Yan, a larvae with a human soul, learned to swim. Jia Yan swam in the harsh pond. He looked at everything around him blankly. As a human being, he had just died. Unexpectedly, when I opened my eyes again, I would see the world in this pond. Just now, he spent a lot of effort to break open the egg and swim from the water to the surface. Zizi's weight is very light, and the tension of the water allows him to float on the surface. After standing for a while, he sank down again because he was unsteady. All told, less than 10 minutes had passed since he was reborn as a wanderer. As a human being, Jia Yan could not accept his fate of being reborn as an insect, and the insect was still a larvae. As long as he continues to grow up, he will become a mosquito that everyone shouts about. But no matter how unwilling it is, it has become a fact. Jia Yan was a college student before he was reborn. Although he majored in computer science, his roommates always lamented that he chose the wrong major. He should not have studied computer science, but should have applied for the zoology major. Yes, Jia Yan's hobby is studying various animals. Although it is not at the expert level, as an amateur, I have plenty of relevant knowledge. While his roommate was playing online games, he was staring at the feet of some kind of insect on the computer monitor, his eyes shining with obsession. While his roommates were looking for girlfriends and sleeping out, he stayed alone in the dormitory, looking at fantasy pictures of ancient dinosaurs with an expression full of interest. As such an animal nerd, the first time he acted like a normal boy was to have sex with a rich man for the girl he had a crush on. And this action was the reason for Jia Yan's death and rebirth. He was beaten by the men ordered by the powerful man and died tragically in a quiet alley. Yun, thinking of the name of that powerful disciple, Jia Yan's current lonely body could not help but tremble slightly. This was a sign of anger. Even if I am reborn as an insect or a tiny mosquito, I will definitely find a way to avenge you. A scum like you, as long as I live, I will never let you go. Jia Yan made a decision in his heart. But how can I take revenge with my current body? When you grow up, you will be a mosquito. Very good. Mosquitoes can suck blood, and their small mouthparts are the most powerful attacking weapons. Many people don't know that among all animals in the world, the number of people who die every year from viruses transmitted by mosquitoes ranks first among all animals. Even more fatalities than all the murderous animals from the 2nd to the 10th place combined. Jia Yan's eyes lit up. In this way, it's really a good thing that I was reborn as a mosquito. If I were an insect, there really wouldn't be anything I could do. In this case, when you grow from a larva to a mosquito, you can find a way to be infected with the deadly virus, and then infect Yun with the virus. Jia Yan smiled cruelly in his heart and made this decision. And that virus needs to be as painful as possible. It's not too much to deal with a murderer, right? But there is a problem. Among mosquitoes, only female mosquitoes can transmit viruses by sucking blood. Female mosquitoes suck blood because laying eggs requires a lot of nutrients, so they will suck the blood of other animals to supplement the nutrients needed for reproduction. The male mosquito does not need to give birth, so his mouthparts have not evolved to be as powerful as the female mosquito, so under normal circumstances, he can only suck some nectar and juice to satisfy his hunger. Jia Yan was on the water just now and observed his own reflection on the water. Through comparison of several organs, he realized that he was obviously reborn into a male larvae. Male larvae will naturally grow into male mosquitoes, and male mosquitoes have no blood-sucking ability at all. If you don't have the ability to suck blood, how can you take revenge? Male mosquitoes don't have the ability to suck blood. That's just a general rule. Now I'm reborn. A male mosquito with human wisdom and soul can always change something. Jia Yan could not willingly become an ordinary male mosquito, and his life cycle was only about 20 days. In order to take revenge, he must change something. The first thing is food. The first step I have to do is to survive. Jia Yan looked at the pond in front of him. This pond was too dirty, but because it was dirty, there were many plankton and insect larvae in it. The larvae live on algae and bacteria. Are they bacteria? Jia Yan swam to a black object that looked like bacteria. Such objects are so small that they are invisible to the human eye. After being reborn as a child, the small child can see these tiny things. Jia Yan looked at the babies around him who were born in the same batch, and they were devouring floating things around them one by one. Among them were black objects like this. If they can eat it, I should be able to eat it too. Jia Yan suppressed his nausea and probed his mouth in front of the object. The bristles in his mouth moved rapidly, and the water flow produced pulled the bacteria toward his body. Then Jia Yan took a deep breath and sucked the bacteria into his mouth. It's edible. A new book has been launched. This book is full of creativity and plot. As long as you can sign the contract, it is guaranteed to be completed. Everyone can safely collect and recommend it. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 2. Jia Yan got the feeling from the feedback of biological organs, which was his own food. I want to live. I must live. Even if you eat bacteria or something. Jia Yan was filled with the desire to survive. He tried his best to swing his body and swim toward more plankton and bacteria. Suddenly, an object as fast as lightning rushed past his eyes. Jia Yan was shocked. Well, that is a water hopper, a dragonfly larvae. I must not provoke it. Jia Yan saw the fierce-looking monster running past him dozens of centimeters away, then caught another bird with the unique double hooks in its mouth, then took it into his mouth and chewed it. He is familiar with the insect class and knows that this monster is called a water hopper, and it will evolve into a dragonfly when it reaches adulthood. Before becoming a dragonfly, this water hopper is the overlord of the water, and can even prey on small fish seedlings. Perhaps in the eyes of humans, small water hoppers are just insects without any threat. But in Jia Yan's eyes now, it looks like a giant monster. Its powerful mouthparts and double hooks can easily catch him and eat him alive. There are a lot of water bugs. There are even many mat seaweed flowers. This small pond is simply an insect colony. After carefully walking around, Jia Yan found that the ecology of this pond is not bad, although it is dirty and messy. But has a very complete ecosystem. There are many creatures that can threaten me, and there are even some species that I haven't seen yet. He decided to be careful and careful again. He couldn't guarantee whether there would be another chance of rebirth. Through the simple judgment of observing the scenery on the water, he felt that there would not be much difference between the time of his rebirth and the time of his death. At least it won't be as exaggerated as dying in 2015 and now becoming 2215. The span is only a few years at most, and it might even be the same year as the time of his death. And if you want revenge, this time period is also the best. Because with that murderer's family background, he might not be convicted of instigating a murder. Powerful people always have various methods. If this is the case, then Jia Yan doesn't want to see that Yun has been alive and enjoying life for many years. If the years are relatively close, that would be the best. He will turn into a mosquito and let Yun die from an unknown virus in his sleep. By ending Yun's happy time, he might have changed his direction and saved some people. Of course, if a little mosquito wants to achieve this step, it must start working hard from the time of being a mosquito. There's a saying that goes, if you don't work hard when you're young, you'll be miserable when you get old, right? In the pond, a tiny newborn baby made a decision that will affect the baby's life. Even if his life is really only half a month, he will realize his desire for revenge in this short life of rebirth. And to realize this wish, he has to work hard and work hard. The life cycle of a male mosquito is very short, and its larval state, that is, the larval process, lasts about 10 to 15 days. The lifespan of male mosquitoes is indeed too short, but the main reason is that they have completed the mating process. If I didn't do that, the survival time would be greatly improved. Jia Yan has a human soul, so why would he care about, mating with a female mosquito? If you don't do that, you should be able to live for a month or two. Although this survival time is still relatively short for humans, it is better than the average male mosquito's lifespan of less than a month, right? Of course, this is not absolute. There are many factors that affect the lifespan of male mosquitoes. In order to prevent those factors from appearing, Jia Yan decided to let himself learn from female mosquitoes and supplement more nutrients. This should have a considerable impact on the lifespan of insects. Jia Yan twisted his body in the pond, adapting to his current way of moving. The sewage in the pond was very turbid. Jia Yan searched around and found a cleaner place, and decided to make it his temporary home. There are many food sources for larvae. Even if I only choose the more nutritious ones, I don't have to worry about food at all. The only danger is those natural enemies. While Jia Yan was looking for a new home, he encountered two water hyacinths lying there waiting for prey. Jia Yan saw them from a distance and avoided them. It is impossible for ordinary larvae to have the sense of crisis of human beings. In this regard, Jia Yan is even more advanced than ordinary larvae. The so-called nutritious substances should be objects rich in protein. But among the items eaten by larvae, which ones are nutritious? Jia Yan decided to try everything. As a child with a human soul, he could try many things and then decide what to eat. After several attempts, he felt the feedback from his biological organs and liked the gray-white organic matter. After Jia Yan absorbed this organic matter into his mouth, he immediately felt a sense of satisfaction, and his body soon felt very comfortable. So be it, I hope I made the right choice. Jia Yan chose this gray-white organic matter as food. He started eating non-stop. In order to store nutrients, you have to force yourself even if you can't eat. Otherwise, how are you different from ordinary larvae? While eating, he was also consciously exercising his body. That tiny body kept flexing and stretching without stopping for a moment. Every time he was exhausted, and his biological senses told him that he couldn't go on anymore, so he controlled his body and floated in the water to take a rest. Of course, Jia Yan had been observing his surroundings during this period, trying to stay away from those terrifying water flies. Jia Yan didn't know whether GZI needed to sleep, but every time he was tired, the human soul would feel a strong sense of lethargy, and then he would find a hidden place, such as a small space between two pebbles. Hide in and sleep for 10 minutes. The worm needs to breathe. He is always woken up by the feeling of suffocation in the middle of his sleep, and then has to float to the surface to use a straw to ventilate. Every time he came up to the surface to take a breath, Jia Yan was very nervous, because the water turtle near his new home always took advantage of the time when they were taking a breath. Sneak attack? No, you need to practice holding your breath. When the rebirth time comes the next day, Jia Yan once again witnessed the neighbor water hyacinth catching the same kind of larvae not far away. This made Jia Yan feel a sense of crisis. He began to feel that frequent breathing of oxygen was also a very risky thing. Jia Yan decided to train himself to extend his ventilation time as much as possible. Oh, I can't hold it in anymore. No, no, no. How could I be defeated by this feeling? The first time he tried, Jia Yan held his breath for 3 minutes longer than usual. I only held it for about 3 minutes longer, which is no better than ordinary larvae. I will hold it in longer next time. On the second try, Jia Yan held it for about an extra minute on top of the last 3 minutes. In this way, while exercising to lengthen his breathing time, he also exercised the strength of his lonely body. Within a few minutes at a time, he would become exhausted and weak. Jia Yan knows that this kind of hard work is not without reward, and the reward effect will be unexpected. Because the molt time of each molt is very short, 1 molt is 1 growth. And every time he sheds his skin, that's when he reaps the benefits of his training. The new book needs your support. You hereby begs for your collection and recommendation support. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 3. Time finally came to the 3rd day after rebirth. Precisely because the life cycle of larvae is very short, they develop and grow very quickly. In just 3 days, the effects of Jia Yan's exercise have been seen. Through continuous exercise and the selection of nutrient-rich gray organic matter for consumption, his body was much larger than that of the babies born in the same batch around him. Then the time he can hold his breath has been greatly extended. Now he can hold his breath in the water for half an hour without needing to ventilate. Very good. The insect's body does have great potential, but it has never had a human soul like mine. Jia Yan was very satisfied with the results of his training. My body is a little itchy. It should be the time to shed my skin for the first time. Jia Yan controlled his body and swam quickly towards the gap between the 2 pebbles that had become his home. While swimming, he also vigorously devoured the gray-white organic matter around him. Although he still didn't understand the scientific names of these organic matter, since it was good for his body, he should eat more. Try your best to store some nutrients, it should be helpful to yourself during the molting process. Soon, in the gap between the two pebbles, Jia Yan's body, which was larger than the average newborn baby, appeared there. His body swelled and his outer skin became somewhat solidified. These epidermis are composed of waxy layers and chitin, which become easily shed during molding. Jia Yan felt very sad on his head and couldn't help but keep struggling in the water. His delicate exoskeleton began to crack slowly. Jia Yan felt the exoskeleton of his head crack. He used all his strength to drill his body towards the crack. Facts have proved that his constant training of his body also played a certain role at this time. It didn't take long for his body to spring out of the old skin. The new skin is almost transparent, and when it comes into contact with the dirty pond water, it suddenly changes color. Jia Yan did not stop moving. He was still moving his body. He could feel his body strengthening and growing in an instant. If you exercise with all your strength at this time, the effect you will get will be better than the combined effect of the previous few days of exercise. Finally, when Jia Yan weakly stopped moving again, a larva that had undergone a transformation appeared in the middle of the cobblestones. This is a giant larvae that is twice the size of other larvae. Its size is even comparable to that of a larvae that has undergone 4 complete molds. The first transformation shows the difference between Jia Yan's reborn larvae and ordinary larvae. Very good. This feeling makes me want to stop. Jia Yan felt that his body became stronger in an instant, and he was very satisfied. Sure enough, insects are a species with infinite possibilities, but they are too perfect in evolution. They are so perfect that they can easily live in the world without having wisdom. And now, I, a reborn human being with wisdom, am possessed by a with ZZI, you can definitely develop the maximum potential in your body. How perfect insects really are can be seen just by looking at the mosquitoes and cockroaches among them. The insecticide drugs developed by humans can make their offspring resistant as long as one mosquito or cockroach that is poisoned but not dead escapes. This is the horror of insects. And Jia Yan, who possesses human wisdom, used his own will to make the body of a child perfect, which is unprecedented. This shedding not only strengthened Jia Yan's body, but also greatly increased his self-confidence. As long as you persist, good things will happen. Perhaps no one in the world can imagine what kind of monster an insect with human intelligence will evolve into. Letting his strong body bounce in the deep water, Jia Yan can feel the power coming from his body. Perhaps compared to humans, this is a tiny bit of power. But for a child with the same birth conditions, Jia Yan is simply an incredible individual. Very good, my estimate was correct. As long as the body of an insect is deliberately trained, its potential is unlimited. I will make myself stronger during the second mold. He had to do it when he thought of it. The lifespan of a mosquito was there, and Jia Yan felt that he couldn't waste a moment. He began to continue to eat large amounts of that gray-white organic matter and nothing else. His powerful body bounced harder, and he also began to consciously train some areas that were difficult to exercise. The above 2 points are old things. This time Jia Yan thought of a new training plan. That is to use your body to constantly hit the pebbles. The 2 pebbles he regarded as his home were probably only half the size of an adult's hand, but for Jia Yan, who had become an orphan, this was the best shelter and the warmest place. Now the 2 pebbles are being used again in his training program. He hid in the cracks and hit the cobblestones with his body again and again. After a collision, the body bounced back using the force of the shock, and then moved forward with all its strength, hitting the cobblestone surface again. This goes on and on until he runs out of oxygen or is exhausted. The life of a mosquito is too short and there is no time to rest. With repeated impacts, the algae on the surface of the pebbles fell off, revealing the original color of the gray pebbles inside. It can be said that it is an impossible task for a small worm to knock down all the stubborn algae. Jia Yan actually did it. It hurts. It hurts so much. But this little pain is nothing compared to the severe pain of being beaten to death. So I have to keep going. Keep going, Keep going. Every time Jia Yan wanted to give up, he would recall the scene of his death as a human being in his mind. That kind of beating, punches to the flesh, and fatal attacks from feet and legs, even if he was reincarnated into the body of GZI, he could still recall the indescribable pain. My body hurts and my heart hurts even more. He was beaten so hard that he couldn't fight back, and he hated himself for being useless. He was beaten to death all because he didn't exercise regularly. If you exercise, even if you still die, you can drag a murderer to death with you. In order not to have the same regrets after rebirth, I can't give up this time and work hard and try harder. Crash, Jia Yan roared in his heart, and the collision became more violent. He could feel that because of his repeated collisions, this child, which was in its infancy and was growing extremely fast, had been fully trained. The exoskeleton became tougher and the internal organs of the body became stronger and stronger. Besides training, he just eats. When it's time to train, train like crazy every second. And when it's time to eat, eat with all your might. Those gray-white organic matter reappear every day, and the number seems to be endless. So Jia Yan could eat freely, and he would eat even after he was full. His stomach would bulge every time, as if he had doubled his weight. After these foods enter the body, they are quickly transformed into nutrients needed for the growth of larvae, and the remaining larger part becomes the source of energy for Jia Yan's crazy training. Train. Eat. Train again. Eat again. A little worm, in this pond, is performing an arduous growth that makes humans stunned. Soon, another 3 days passed. Jia Yan found that it was time for him to shed his skin again. In fact, the total time of his 2 molts was 1 or 2 days later than that of ordinary larvae. The larvae in the same batch as him had already completed their 2nd molt. Perhaps this is inseparable from Jia Yan's crazy training. But regardless of whether it is a good influence or a bad influence, this difference is what Jia Yan wants to see. If there is no difference at all from ordinary larvae, he will be very discouraged. Because no matter how crazy he is and how he motivates himself, the final result will be just an ordinary mosquito. At best, it's just a stronger ordinary mosquito. But during the 2nd molt, the appearance time of larvae was different from that of ordinary larvae, which gave Jia Yan a different idea. Thank you very much, brother tiger who eats pigs. Bulletin, you could not have expected that on the first day this book was published, a brother came to leave a real long review and voted for the book. Thank you very much, Bulletin, you found himself full of strength. This is all due to you, brother, thank you. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 4. I can never be an ordinary male mosquito. If I die after living for 20 days, what's the point of living again? Jia Yan still firmly believes in his first meeting. The biggest difference between male mosquitoes and female mosquitoes is that female mosquitoes have the habit of storing nutrients. Their source of nutrients is from sucking the blood of animals. Although this kind of living habit makes most animals very bored. As the masters of the earth, humans even define mosquitoes as pests, but they can make even the overlords of the earth extremely afraid. This is proof that female mosquitoes are very successful on the road of evolution. In addition to the blood-sucking thing that everyone talks about, they can also live longer than male mosquitoes. Some are even able to survive the winter and live for more than a year. And why do males with the same genes only live less than a month? Therefore, Jia Yanze firmly believes that as long as he learns to store nutrients, he will definitely be able to live longer. In the larval era, it was this kind of gray-white organic matter. When the mosquito era comes, he will also learn to suck blood, and even find nutrients developed by humans to see if they are effective for his own body. It's all about surviving. One more day is a day to live. An extra hour of life is an hour. Live. This is Jia Yan's other strong wish besides revenge. Bump. Get stronger. Bump, 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 Jia Yan controlled his tiny body and hit the pebbles like crazy. Okay. That tingling feeling is back. Keep banging. I want this new exoskeleton to be stronger. Hit me. Jia Yan felt a surge of tenacity in his heart. Regardless of the fact that the old skin on his head was peeling off and the new skin was extremely tender, he still hit the cobblestone surface regardless. Collide. 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 A certain moment. Pibbo, in Jia Yan's auditory organ composed of downy hairs, he seemed to faintly hear the sound of broken brocade silk. His body was light, and his body was completely separated from the old skin. The second mold is complete. Very good, the results of this exercise are even more intense. The new exoskeleton is actually relatively hard right from the start. Feeling the strength of his body, Jia Yan was very happy. But he didn't stop training. Instead, he bounced his body and crashed into the cobblestones. The newly born exoskeleton has the highest growth potential. I want it to be stronger when it is completely solidified. Jia Yan's switch to be cruel to himself seemed to be fully turned on. If you are not crazy, you are not a devil. If you want to defy heaven, you must become crazy. Yes. Not crazy. Don't be cruel to yourself. Nothing can be changed. He didn't care about the new skin and the pain that was constantly transmitted to his brain, he just hit the pebbles one after another. The pain was more than twice as severe as usual. Jia Yan even felt some blood seeping out from the surface of the exoskeleton, but the blood quickly dissolved into the sewage, making it difficult to see clearly. Bleeding in insects is very rare, because their blood is in the deep sinusoids, and it is impossible to bleed easily. Therefore, Jia Yan's lonely body is the most severe warning at this time. Jia Yan paused slightly, but there was still an unyielding look in his cold compound eyes. I won't die so easily. This little training can't torture me to death. Ah! Continue, hit. The larvae, which have molted twice, continue to grow and expand at an alarming rate in the gaps made of small pebbles. 5 days passed quickly. The third mold, which was long overdue, did not come after waiting for a long time. But this is better. At least Jia Yan thinks this is a good thing. The more different it is from ordinary larvae, the more it means that his self-training methods are not biased. The night passes and the sun-drenched day arrives. A dark-bodied bird slowly swam out from the nest made of 2 pebbles. His body is very huge, and his height is at least half a circle larger than that of an average bird. His skin was covered in marks and even torn in some places. But these skins have a toughness that other larvae skins don't have. Jia Yan controlled this powerful body and bounced suddenly in the sewage. His speed was already very fast, and he swam several centimeters almost instantly. Don't underestimate it. It's only a few centimeters. For a small figure, it's like a human running 100 meters in less than 10 seconds. It's simply appalling. Jia Yan's current swimming style is completely different from other larvae who only instinctively move up and down vertically. Yes, he no longer looks like an ordinary wanderer. My body started to itch yesterday, but the skin didn't fall off at all. It seems that I trained too hard. Jia Yan felt that his body had gone through 2 molds. He now felt a little swollen. The third mold was supposed to have happened yesterday, but it still hadn't come yet. Plop. Plop. Jia Yan is extremely fast, and his swimming method is beyond the scope of ordinary swimming. Compared with ordinary larvae, most larvae can only swim vertically up and down. Jia Yan's bouncing body not only moves up and down faster, but also moves sideways at a similar speed. This is something that can be done with just a slight change of posture. At least for Jia Yan, who possesses human intelligence, it is not a problem at all. The springing method he has practiced since he was born has given him great strength in his waist and abdomen, which is the main reason why he is so fast. This third mold should be today. This molt is over. I only have one last molt before I can emerge into a mosquito. Before that, I must reserve more nutrients. Jia Yan swam towards those gray-white organic matter. Perhaps it was the safety he had experienced for so many days that made him forget that there was a terrifying predator near his home. But there was a sudden explosion in the water. A figure that was extremely large compared to a bird sprang out from the soil and shot towards the place where Jia Yan was with lightning speed. This water hopper is so fast when it hunts its prey that it is impossible for an ordinary larvae to react. But this does not include Jia Yan. Jia Yan was startled in his heart, and his strong waist and abdomen suddenly exerted force, and with an ejection, he narrowly escaped from the double hooks in Shui Hao's mouth. Click. The hard double hook slammed into Jia Yan's abdomen, but did not cause any damage. Shui Hao also seemed a little surprised. The little thing in front of him escaped his life. He turned around and prepared to continue attacking. But before that, Jia Yan had already unleashed all his strength on his waist and abdomen, and his body suddenly stretched and contracted. Escaped from this water area. It's so scary. I didn't expect that. I was almost eaten. Jia Yan was extremely frightened. The feeling of being attacked by a giant predator was definitely not a very interesting thing. Compared with Shui Hao's body, GZI is still too small. Even if Jia Yan is trained to death, he still can't fight it. I was careless this time. I must be more careful next time. Jia Yan looked behind him and found that although the water hopper had not caught its prey, it was not discouraged at all. Instead, it sank back to the bottom of the water without any arrogance. It sinks its body near the sand and continues to wait for prey to take the bait. Jia Yan avoided that position and swallowed gray-white organic matter nearby. Although you are in danger, you can't hide like a turtle, otherwise your efforts these days will be in vain. Just when Jia Yan was about 90% full after eating, he suddenly felt extremely itchy. Well, it's time to shed. Itching is a sign that molting is about to begin. Jia Yan quickly speeded up, carefully passed the direction of the water hopper, and returned to his own nest made of cobblestones. Entering the gap, you can see that the cobblestone surface inside is all bare, and the algae has been completely worn away by Jia Yan's repeated impacts these days. Jia Yan's itching symptoms became more severe. Why does it still hurt? Isn't it usually very simple to shed skin? Jia Yan waited for a while and found that no matter how his body swayed, the outer layer of skin refused to crack, which made him panic. That's right, I must have trained too much. This time the exoskeleton is too hard and I can't peel off this layer of skin like a normal worm. Jia Yan forced himself to calm down, and then he looked at the smooth cobblestone surface. Since I couldn't shed it in the normal way, I learned how snakes shed their skin and rubbed it on the stone surface. He controlled his body to swim near the pebbles, and leaned his body against the surface of the stone, constantly grinding it up and down. Pain. But very comfortable. The second update is here. Brother, the tiger that eats pigs, I gave another 100 starting coins as a reward today. I don't know how to thank you. It's just a novel that was published the day after it was released. I'm very satisfied to have the support of my brothers. Bayou is full of strength again. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 5. Click, click. Hearing sounds ringing in his ears, his stiff exoskeleton began to crack bit by bit. Okay, continue. The grinding continued for at least 10 minutes. Finally, when Jia Yan was about to be exhausted, he slowly swam out from the old skin with a new and tender skin. The third mold, successful. Okay, although it's very tiring, routine training is essential. Every time you shed your skin, it's a huge improvement, and it's when the training effect is the best. I can't let go of this opportunity. Jia Yan did not wait for his physical strength to recover, and controlled his body to hit the cobblestone surface. Time flies quickly, and another 7 days have passed like this. A dark and windy night. The sky was overcast, and the breeze blew through the turbid pond, causing ripples on its surface. This pond, which seems very peaceful to humans, is actually full of turbulent waves, with countless tiny creatures fighting and dying inside. A water hopper, quietly hiding in its own territory. The water source in this area is relatively clean, and there are so many creatures in the water that this water hopper doesn't need to go hungry. It lurks quietly at the bottom of the water, waiting for prey to appear. Suddenly, an unusual existence appeared in front of this water hyacinth. That's a larva. But this larvae is different. Its huge body is nearly twice the size of ordinary larvae. Is this still the kind of creature I eat every day? Shui Hao was in a daze, but due to its aggressive nature, it was still ready to attack. Even if this larvae is twice as big as the average larvae, it cannot be its opponent. After all, water worms are natural hunters that can even kill fish of the same size. The huge Jiza didn't seem to notice the existence of this water hyacinth. He just flicked his unique black body and swam in the water at an unhurried speed. Shui Hao was ready to attack, and then jump out suddenly. A series of bubbles appeared in the water. This was the air bubble caused by the water hopper attacking too fast. You're the one I've been waiting for. But at this moment Shui Hao launched an attack. The huge bird in the water suddenly ejected with force from its waist and abdomen. Poof! The attack of Shui Hao's front legs and double hooks fell into the empty space. It turned its head in annoyance and focused its sights on the huge bird that quickly left. The body jumped. Attack again. Come on. Afraid of you. The giant worm continued to move its body and dodge the blow. Its speed is so fast that it is almost as fast as the attack speed of the water hyacinth. Shui Hao's attack still fell into the air. This time, before Shui Hao could launch his third offensive, the huge Ji quickly bounced his body several times, causing his figure to disappear into the dark sewage at night. How exciting! Jia Yan, who was swimming very fast, carefully controlled his body and felt extremely happy in his heart. This larval body is exactly his. In 7 days, it has shed its skin again, bringing him to the early stage of the 4th molt. And this is also the last time the larvae shed its skin, and then it's time to pupate and become a mosquito. Because he felt that he was stronger than ever before, Jia Yan deliberately provoked the overlord of this water area, his neighbor water frog. The result was really good. He controlled his body and easily dodged the water bug's attacks 2 and 3 times. In a few days I will pupate and prepare to become a mosquito. Since I can fight against the water grasshopper, in addition to the usual training these days, I will go to tease the water grasshopper a few more times to strengthen my dodge speed. Jia Yan made the neighbor cry without tears. Decide. Compared to the 2nd and 3rd molds, this last mold gave Jia Yan a completely strong body of steel. Its shell is pitch black, with mottled colors on it, and numerous impact marks are clearly visible. This body is simply a specially made larval shell. It is basically impossible for ordinary larvae to develop to the level of Jia Yan. Compared with those smaller similar ones, Jia Yan's body during his last mold was not only twice as big, but also not as small as them. Instead, it gave people a sense of weight and seemed to be very strong. This is inseparable from his tireless exercise and supplementary food. I am about to become a mosquito. After becoming a mosquito, there are too many things to do and too many things to do. In order to adapt to the future life, before that, I have to make this body stronger. Jia Yan returned to his own nest, a small home in the cobblestones. This cozy and safe place seems a bit small now. Jia Yan controlled his body to hit inside. Because the space was too small, it felt a little awkward to swing his body back and forth. It doesn't matter, the impact is not too big. Jia Yan continues to hit. Bang 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 bang. The impact after impact completely peeled off the last bit of algae on the surface of the pebbles, leaving the gap in the stone to look like it was originally. Another night passed like this. GZI has no concept of rest. Except for Jia Yan, who falls asleep from time to time, he basically spends the whole day exercising and looking for food. When the first ray of sunlight shines into the pond. Okay. Go out to get some air and find food, and flirt with that water hopper again. The huge body in the cobblestones began to swim. Jia Yan's body was now fully adapted to swimming. In other words, compared to ordinary larvae, he is a completely good swimmer. No larvae has his swimming skills. The huge body of the worm swam out of the gap, swallowing gray-white organic matter in the water. This kind of organic matter looks much smaller, and you have to eat a lot to fill your belly. But this also proves how huge Jia Yan's body has grown. Just like human children, they are full after eating one banana when they are young, but they are not necessarily full after eating 10 bananas when they grow up. Well, why did I think of bananas? You can't be too evil to be a larvae. Jia Yan thought of the metaphor of bananas and had a bit of a hilarious impulse. The days of being reborn as a child were very difficult. No one talked or discussed. Every time I fell asleep and dreamed, I dreamed of my family and school life. But every time he woke up, that silent feeling of loneliness would fill Jia Yan's body. He knew very well that there was no way he could go back to those days before. In order to relieve loneliness and prevent himself from going crazy, he would keep talking to himself in his mind. There was no one to encourage or cheer him up, so he just told himself to come on. Say it 100 times, say it 1,000 times, say it 10,000 times. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to persist in the arduous training. There was no one to chat with, so he solved his loneliness by himself. The chattering in my head is non-stop all day, every moment, and every second. In this way, he will not forget that he was once a human being, and that he will not forget that he is completely different from the others around him. Well, this is enough. Jia Yan wasted at least 10 minutes swallowing gray organic matter before he felt a little bloated. Next, it's time to tease the neighbor. Jia Yan cheered up and swam towards the direction where the water hopper usually was. Sure enough, the water hopper was lurking at the bottom of the water. Its own color is mixed with the sludge, and ordinary aquatic organisms cannot distinguish it at all. However, as a being with a human soul, Jia Yan naturally has a judgment ability that far exceeds that of ordinary creatures, and he can easily distinguish the water flies. You still have to be careful. I can't resist this guy's power now. If I get caught accidentally, I will still die. Jia Yanqiang pulled himself together and cruising toward that side cautiously. His body was in a position where he could use his strength to escape at any time. Aha! The water hyacinth obviously didn't remember the huge bird in front of it. It still had the same attack mode and the same movements. Come suddenly. The pair of ferocious mouthparts and double hooks were swiping right in front of my eyes. Escape, Jia Yan's heart moved, and his lonely body suddenly bounced. He escaped from the attack. Poof! Shui Hao's attack didn't stop at all. He spotted the direction in which Jia Yan was escaping, continued to run, and actually approached again. I'll run away again. Jia Yan used his body's explosive power to the limit and, with a movement of his body, he escaped from the water bug attack again. After failing to capture prey twice in a row, this water hopper was obviously a little confused. It paused in the water, staring at Jia Yan, who was slowly leaving with a pair of compound eyes, and let its body gradually sink to the bottom of the water. Haha, you must be dumbfounded. Jia Yan looked at Shui Hao behind him and chuckled disdainfully in his heart. What was once a huge threat seems to be a thing of the past. As long as you be careful, this water hopper no longer poses much of a threat. This kind of thing is usually impossible for a Jizi to do, right? Jia Yan felt a sense of pride rising in his heart, but at the same time, he felt a sense of loss. Even Shui Hao can't help him. It seems that in this pond world, his last wish has been fulfilled. Are you leaving? The mood is very complicated. It's time to say goodbye, the first world after rebirth. After returning to the nest, Jia Yan stared blankly at his small cobblestone home. Special thanks to the brothers who left messages. Thanks to you, the motivation to update Baiyu is even stronger. Of course, I would also like to thank those who collected and recommended it. Everyone gives Baiyu full confidence in this book, thank you. Of course, I am most grateful to my brothers, the tiger who eats pigs. Not only did he leave a message to vote, but he also gave a reward. Baiyu loves his brother the most, haha, the roles you mentioned have also been arranged. Other friends who need supporting actors/characters can also leave a message and see if they can be arranged. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 6. The time was too short, Jia Yan had been training, and he didn't have time to decorate this small home. He arched his body and carefully swam to the side of his receding skin. Use the tail to tidy up the skins and stuff them between the pebbles. He didn't know if he would have the chance to return here in the future. Placing these 4 retired skins in his home would be considered a memory. He will always remember that he had such a warm little home when he was still a larvae. Time passes quickly. 3 days later again. Jia Yan's even harder body finally responded on this day. Pupate. Jia Yan felt the meaning of this mosquito's natural gene. He's going to pupate. Emerging from the pupa is a mosquito. Then, I have to say goodbye to this pond world where I was born. Well, isn't this exactly what you want? There's nothing you can't bear to part with. The giant worm shook his head, and then, their bodies began to slowly hug each other. Jia Yan controlled his body to form a circle, leaving only a long tail in the outer circle. From the side, the whole thing looked like a comma. Pupation has officially begun. Jia Yan only felt that all his organs were undergoing drastic changes. The wing buds that gradually appear after the 4th molt can be clearly felt as they protrude, ready to fully grow. The 6 thin, downy legs are also gradually hardening, and they will turn into 3 pairs of strong and powerful long legs. Jia Yan felt a little disgusted and found that he could not help spitting out some kind of special saliva from his mouth. The saliva was mainly composed of chitin and protein, as well as insect-specific secretion substances. These substances wrapped Jia Yan's head and began to slowly condensation forms the pupal shell. At the same time, Jia Yan's entire body organs and appearance are changing. The continuous consumption of nutrients by this change was extremely exaggerated. Fortunately, he had spent the past few days replenishing his food with sufficient food, which was able to resist the rate of nutrient loss. He couldn't imagine how other children except himself could survive this ordeal. In fact, this is also because Jia Yan himself is a special case. Insects pupate, which is a change, and their transformation into adults is based on the degree of strengthening of the previous larvae. Jia Yan is so strong, many times stronger than ordinary larvae, so his pupation is naturally extraordinary. Jia Yan hasn't figured this out yet, but he will figure it out in the future. Fortunately, Jia Yan was well prepared and ate the nutritious food in his body until his stomach was full. Jia Yan found that his exoskeleton began to stick together, and he could only remain in this pupa state. The pupal state of larvae is unique among all insects. After other insects pupate, their bodies are basically unable to move. Only larvae can move their tails after pupation, which can be regarded as barely moving. Since I can still move. In order to strengthen the adult body, I will continue to exercise. Jia Yan looked at the cobblestone wall in front of him with fierce eyes, and controlled his body to hit it. There is only one last step left to form his long-lasting body in the future. He had worked so hard to get through the previous steps, but this last step was also the most important. Of course, he would not let his previous efforts go in vain. The body is undergoing drastic changes, and the constant impact from the outside world causes the body to continue to adjust. In order to adapt to the heavy blows from the outside world, these new changes begin to mutate to another level. Bump, bump, bump. The previous 4 times of shedding and strengthening were all to prepare the ground for this time. There is no reason to give up on strengthening one's own training for this last growth. The bodies of insects are very strong, and they will continue to grow in their juvenile state. In other words, Jia Yan was very strong in the Jiao era, and he will be equally strong when he becomes a mosquito. And now he is still continuing to work hard, so this powerful mutation will continue to grow. After 4 molds, plus the strengthening of pupation, no one can imagine what kind of terrifying monster will finally emerge. The shell solidified even more, and Jia Yan found that his body, except for his tail, was completely unable to move. If the impact isn't fast enough, he grinds hard on the cobblestones. If the power to grind is gone, he will swing his body and struggle hard. In short, it is to make the body strong and stronger. But no matter how he twisted and struggled, Jia Yan made sure that his body did not wander out of the cobblestone home. There is no guarantee of safety when he goes out to the outside world. Only here is the warm little nest that protects his safety. Twist. Collision. Tired. Lack of oxygen. Pain. All kinds of things were happening. Except for occasionally going out to take a breath, Jia Yan spent the rest of the time hiding in the lair. Now his ability to hold his breath has reached a full hour. I believe this has already broken the strongest record of GZI. The process of pupation is so exhausting. His emerging body not only needs to be supplied with a large amount of nutrients for its growth. It also needs to provide a lot of consumption from struggling and impacting. After 2 days of this, the nutrients stored in his body were no longer enough, and a strong feeling of weakness filled Jia Yan's body. Usually, larvae can successfully break out of their pupae in 2 days and evolve into mosquitoes. However, I have no sign of breaking out of my pupae, so I have to reduce my movements now, otherwise I won't survive. Jia Yan reduced the range of movement. He floated up and down in the water. This was perhaps the first time he had felt so relaxed and comfortable in so many days since his rebirth. I don't know what's going on at home. Fortunately, I'm not an only child. Without me, my parents and my little sister are gone. He thought of home. When Jia Yan was a human, his family situation was not very special. My parents are both working class people. There is also a sister who is 3 years younger than Jia Yan and is in high school. Generally speaking, although the family is not a wealthy family, it is still considered to have sufficient food and clothing. But now that Jia Yan has passed away, this bad news will make the family very painful, right? This time I become a mosquito. If possible, go home and see. Jia Yan really misses his family. He has been an orphan for more than 10 days. The smiles of his family often appear in his mind and in his sleep, but he is worried whether the smiles will still remain. When the bad news of being beaten to death comes back, my mother will probably cry for a long time, and my father will also smoke heavily, right? Thinking of his parents, Jia Yan's heart felt sour. If he were still a human being now, he would shed tears. But he's not. The pupating larvae float quietly in the water. He looked at the ground with his eyes, seemingly in a trance. Just like this, surrounded by memories and various emotions, another day passed. Today is the 3rd day of pupation. Jia Yan suddenly felt itchy. It's time. Jia Yan was shocked. His biological senses told him that the moment for him to emerge from the pupa and transform into a male mosquito had arrived. Jia Yan turned his eyes back and looked hard at the small cobblestone house in front of him through the shell of the pupa. Its eyes could barely see anything, but it was still looking intently at its first nest. After a while, Jia Yan sighed deeply. "Goodbye, my home." Immediately, he controlled his body with his tail and swam quickly toward the water. The neighbor at the bottom of the water hopper, was lurking in the mud at the bottom of the water. With a pair of cold eyes, he looked at the huge mosquito pupa that was quickly rising not far away. "Goodbye, big guy." There are many creatures at the bottom of the water, as well as some other newly born larvae, looking for food and swimming in the water. "Goodbye, underwater world." Jia Yan came to the water. Then, he struggled hard from the head. Mosquito pupae are very strong, and you need to use all your strength to break free successfully. After struggling for a long time, the mosquito pupa finally seemed to be a little loose. "Open it," Jia Yan roared in his heart. Pibbo. Sure enough, the pupa shell on the head cracked. Jia Yan couldn't wait, and poked the newborn head out of the crack in the pupa shell, and then drilled out with all his strength. Use force. Try harder. Head. Abdomen. Tail. Legs and feet. Just 3 minutes later, a huge male mosquito floated on the surface of the pond. Finally, a mosquito. Jia Yan, who was stepping on the water, shouted crazily in his heart. "Yun, just wait, I will come to you for revenge soon." Parents, little sister, after your son takes revenge, he will try his best to go back and visit you. On the surface of the pond at night, a dark-colored male Anopheles sinensis mosquito pointed his head toward the sky and let out a silent cry. The second update is completed. Please collect it. I found that today's recommendation votes have increased a lot. Really thankful. There is also a book friend named Fei Yukang Yan Shen who rewarded me with 30 starting coins. Thank you very much. Of course, as always, thank you to the Tiger Who Eats Pigs brother who leaves several comments every day. Several of your suggestions are of great reference value and are very useful for this book. Haha, brother, don't say anything, just 2 words, thank you. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 7. The sky was pitch black, and on the vast land, there were only the rhythmic chirping of crickets, insects, and birds. But, that's just how it sounds to human senses. In fact, the land at night is also very lively. Insects and birds chirp and mosquitoes fly. All kinds of nocturnal creatures are out in force. Jia Yan stood on the water. He looked at his completely reborn body in the reflection of the water through the faint moonlight. What a majestic appearance! Strong bones. Full wings. It looks majestic. Sure enough, it's a male mosquito, and it's an Anopheles sinensis, Jia Yan nodded. Anopheles sinensis, a species of Anopheles subfamily, grows throughout the country except Xinjiang and other places. The wing veins are slightly white, most of the body is covered with tiny scales, and the ventral membrane has a T-shaped white spot. This is the main characteristic of Anopheles sinensis. By the way, this Anopheles sinensis is too big. Jia Yan expressed his amazement at his body. If it weren't for the fact that some details can still be vaguely discerned, I almost wouldn't recognize it. He was amazed, but Jia Yan understood that these were the results of his long-term training, and he would be upset if he didn't have such results. Jia Yan stood on the water, observing his surroundings vigilantly while waiting for his wings to harden so that he could fly. At this time, a similarly newborn Anopheles sinensis mosquito happened to be crawling out of the water next to it. Compared with the diminutive Anopheles sinensis in front of him, Jia Yan can be said to be a giant. He is nearly half as long as the other one. His black exoskeleton is much harder than the other one just by looking at the appearance. When the other party saw Jia Yan's size, he was immediately startled, and then he was so frightened that he fell back into the water again. 3 pairs of long legs were pointing up into the sky, and their 6 legs were flopping in the water. Pht! Jia Yan burst out laughing. Ha ha ha, I hope I didn't scare you, brother. He was very happy. After waiting for a few more minutes, Jia Yan tried to control the wings on his back. The feeling of controlling wings is amazing, or in other words, for Jia Yan now, any kind of action is a unique and new wonderful experience. His body not only has wings, but also 3 pairs of long legs, that is, 6 legs. As a human brain, it is almost impossible to control such a body and can barely walk. Sometimes I want to move my left front foot, but what sticks out is my left middle foot. Sometimes I want to flap my wings, but a pair of hind feet are there to flap my wings. The control is not good at all. Hey, the wings seem to be hard enough. Jia Yan was delighted when he tried again. He began to push slowly. Buzz buzz. The wings beat faster and faster. Finally, he felt his feet lift off the ground. It's really flying. Jia Yan is very excited. When he was a human being, he had a dream to hang glide or skydive to experience the thrill of flying in the sky. But until he was reborn, none of these wishes came true. Let alone skydiving, he had never even flown on a plane. I didn't expect that I could experience this feeling after being reborn as a mosquito. Even more exciting than those, you are basically controlling the flying. Jia Yan controlled his body crookedly and soared into the night sky. Buzz buzz buzz. When I was a human being, I was very disgusted when I heard mosquitoes chirping, but as a mosquito myself, hearing the sound of flying with my wings was a different feeling. It's like a helicopter, super cool. The water is slowly moving away, and the surrounding scenery is slowly getting smaller. Mosquitoes also have a heart, but it is formed by some thick tubular arteries. At this time, Jia Yan felt that the beating of these tubular arteries had increased several notches. This is what is called a rapid heartbeat. So exciting. Flying higher and higher, Jia Yan discovered that the pond he had been living in was not as big as he imagined. It was probably about the size of a basketball court. It was so dirty inside that some humans even dumped garbage in a corner of the pond. Even the gray organic matter that I eat every day might be the spoiled residue of some kind of human food. Jia Yan didn't dare to think any more, he was afraid that he would vomit it out. It turns out that the whole picture of the first world I lived in was like this. He looked at the pond below, controlled his body, and paused in the air for a long time. My little nest seems to be in the corner. No wonder that area is so clean. It turns out that there is a trace of water flowing into the pond from there. Jia Yan was sighing. At this time, the Anopheles brother beside him, who had been flopping in the water for a while, also got up from the water. This guy didn't even look at his big brother flying in the air. He flapped his wings, showing that his flying ability was much better than that of a human like Jia Yan. Jump directly into the sky. Jia Yan looked at him, this mosquito brother, flying towards an open area in the distance. There is a pillar of mosquitoes formed by countless mosquitoes, and there are swarms of demons dancing wildly there. I don't know how many, there are hundreds or thousands. If I remember correctly, there were all mosquitoes waiting to mate. It has nothing to do with me. Jia Yan looked into the distance and couldn't help but shook his head. He is a human being. Although there seems to be an instinct in his body that drives him to enter the mosquito pillar and find some female mosquito beauties to start a reproduction plan, but will he do this? Impossible. Jia Yan spread his wings and flew away in the opposite direction of the mosquito pillar. He discovered that his wings were very powerful and he could fly faster and higher than ordinary mosquitoes. What Jia Yan is most concerned about is his mouth parts. Its mouth parts have obvious characteristics of male Anopheles mosquitoes. They are relatively thin overall and have a subtle upturn at the front end. Compared with the thick mouthparts of female mosquitoes, the mouthparts of male Anopheles mosquitoes are too thin, and the evolution of the upper and lower lips has not reached the level of female mosquitoes, making it difficult to pierce the skin of animals. So generally speaking, male Anopheles sinensis mosquitoes do not meet the requirements for blood sucking. But Jia Yan is different. His mouth parts are also thinner, but that's only relative. Like his huge body, his mouth parts are also relatively large. In terms of mouth parts alone, there is still a certain gap compared to female Anopheles mosquitoes, but it is not comparable to ordinary male mosquitoes. It is true that the mouthparts of female mosquitoes are not as slender and powerful, but after my 20 days of training, this mouthpart has also been affected. Although it is not as good as female mosquitoes, it is definitely much stronger than ordinary male mosquitoes. I just don't know if it can suck blood. I haven't eaten since I pupated. The nutrients are lost too quickly. I can feel that now that I am exercising, I am consuming my life force. I must find food quickly. Hoo. Just when Jia Yan decided to look for food first, suddenly the sound of a strange wind sounded behind him. That was the sound of an extremely fast object flying from the sky. Jia Yan's sensitive ears made of fine hairs quickly captured the sound, and then, the sense of crisis in his heart suddenly exploded. It's an animal that preys on mosquitoes. Run away, he screamed in his heart. The huge Anopheles sinensis suddenly made a vertical descent in the air. Jia Yan felt a terrifyingly large creature pass over his head. It opened its mouth and bit, but it didn't bite Jia Yan, who was resolute in dodging. So big. Jia Yan was shocked. You must know that the largest predator Jia Yan has ever seen since he was reborn as a larvae was just a water worm, and now this creature is many times larger than a water worm. This monster has a ferocious appearance, and its wings are bare without any feathers. It has a dark body and can move nimbly in the dark. It is simply a natural night killer. It's a bat. Jia Yan was so frightened that he almost collapsed, and its strong newborn wings flapped suddenly, its speed became faster, and it plunged downwards. This bat seemed to be very fond of Jia Yan's huge Anopheles mosquito. After turning lightly in the air, it grabbed Jia Yan again. Jia Yan suddenly turned to the left this time. With a human soul, his dodge wisdom must be much stronger than that of ordinary mosquitoes. The bat passed by Jia Yan's body again, and the strong wind this time caused Jia Yan to do somersaults 7 or 8 times in the air. This time the bat seemed to give up and flew into the dark night, quickly disappearing. Horrible. Jia Yan lowered his flying altitude with lingering fear. He had just come out of the pond, and the excitement of growing into a mosquito seemed to make him forget that the outside world might be a more dangerous world for mosquitoes than the world of the pond. There are more predators here, and they often jump out of places you don't expect and eat you. You have to be careful. Jia Yan was flying unsteadily, he was too hungry, but everywhere he looked was dangerous, which made him almost afraid to fall into the weeds and suck the nectar and plant juices. How should I do it? Oh, member clicks and recommendations are quite impressive. Now I would like to ask for your favorites. The majority of Kidian members who have clicked on this book, as well as the majority of book friends with Kidian accounts, please log in and collect this book. Thank you for your support. Reborn as an Interstellar Giant Mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 8. That's right. This looks like it should be a village or a suburb of a big city. So there are more predators in the wild, so if I enter the city, the predators will be greatly reduced. Jia Yan's eyes lit up. And once we enter the city, we can determine the location and then find a way to find that bastard Yun. The more he thought about it, the more he was right. Jia Yan controlled his body, and while he was wary of possible predators, he flew towards the large building complex with many lights in front. First find the human settlement, find a way to fill your stomach, and at the same time determine what action to take next. Generally, the activity range of mosquitoes is within 1 to 2 kilometers of their birthplace. But in fact, mosquitoes can fly up to 200 kilometers a day. This is absolutely extremely fast, and it is impossible for humans to compare with it without the help of transportation. After flying for 2 kilometers, it seems like there are more houses in this area. Near a group of brightly lit buildings, Jia Yan controlled his body and slowed down his flying speed. The human settlement in front of us should be a town. There were still many pedestrians on the street at this time, and the time should not exceed 9 o'clock in the evening. The feeling of this small village is very familiar to Jia Yan, because his hometown is also a similar small town. Very good, at least it won't be a foreign country. It must be in China. Jia Yan was really afraid that he would be reborn abroad. Although when I saw the pedestrian on the first day, I heard him curse in Mandarin, but there are Chinese people all over the world, and God knows if that person is just a Chinese living abroad. Jia Yan controlled his body and descended to fly at low altitude. The town is not big, the main street is only more than 200 meters long, and some shops here are still open. A woman holding a child was chatting with the shop owner in a shop. Listen to the language accent, it sounds like the accent of northern China. Liu Bei, Jia Yan looked at the store number plate and finally made an accurate judgment. Unexpectedly, I was reborn near a town in northern Liaoning, which is far away from Shanghai. But, we'll talk about the distance tomorrow. Let's solve the food problem first. Jia Yan felt a strong hunger protest in his stomach, and he couldn't help but put aside the long distance from Yuan. Flying closer and closer to the woman and child. Jia Yan looked at the child, who was probably a little over 1 year old. At this time, he was holding a can of pure milk of a certain brand in his arms and drinking it everywhere. Jia Yan cheered up, then flapped his wings and flew closer with a buzzing sound. He didn't mean to bite the kid. How could he bite such a cute child? What's more, even if he bites it, he doesn't know whether his young and tender mouthparts can penetrate human skin. Jia Yan's goal is for this kid to dump a whole table full of milk. It's rare to hear that mosquitoes drink milk, but Jia Yan decided to try it out himself. Good boy, don't move. Jia Yan flew forward cautiously. Only when I got there did I realize that the little boy being held by the woman was not a little child at all, but a giant child. I almost peed when I saw a bat just now, but now this little baby is still a baby. But it's many times bigger than that bat. With a single slap from his immature little hands, he can flatten 10 Jia Yan bats. Wow 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 quack, the little boy held the milk carton in his hand and saw Jia Yan. He let out a babbling scream. Don't make trouble. Grandma will take you home to sleep later. The woman holding him patted the child quickly. The boy had poor language skills. He was held in the arms of a woman, and the scenery he saw was invisible to adults. Otherwise, Jia Yan wouldn't dare to have the courage to fly down. It is estimated that this child has never seen such a huge mosquito until he was born at this age, and he almost cried when he babbled. At this time, Jia Yan had stopped next to the child who was dripping milk all over the table. He fluttered his wings. From the time he emerged from the pupa to now, he had flown so far without even touching the ground. He was as exhausted as a mosquito. If it weren't for his strong physique, no other mosquito could fly 2 kilometers in one breath. It's just Jia Yan. Jia Yan looked up at the huge little boy. The saliva dripping from this boy's mouth seemed to be enough to drown Jia Yan half to death. He stopped delaying, put his mouthpart on the puddle of milk, and took a sharp sip. I'll wipe it. What does this smell like? A fishy smell reached his mouth. This taste was completely different from the milk in human imagination. Jia Yan found that he couldn't accept it at all. Poof. He spat out a mouthful of milk. You can't eat it. Jia Yan flew up from the table unsteadily. After eating something he couldn't eat, he was even hungrier. Wow 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 dash. At this time, the little boy who had been brewing for a long time finally burst into tears. Sorry. Jia Yan flew out of the shop in embarrassment, followed by the woman's voice quickly comforting the child. If possible, I really don't want to absorb that kind of plant sap. Not to mention that it has no nutrients, and I have to be close to the plants. The risk of encountering predators will be very high. A gentleman does not stand behind a dangerous wall. Jia Yan would rather stay under the eyes of the humans who dominate the earth than see those predators. The loss of nutrients cannot be delayed. Do we really want to try to suck blood? Jia Yanfei was swinging on the streets of this small town at a height of 3 to 4 meters. Just when he was wondering whether to try to suck blood, the figures of two men walking staggeringly came into view. I'm telling you, Lao, old Li, this life is over, a middle-aged man with half a bald head shouted with one finger. Okay. Stop talking, let's go home. Come on, I'll take you home. The other man was also a middle-aged man. He pulled the man in front of him, and the two kept entangled there. Drunk. Jia Yan's eyes lit up. The matter of sucking blood for the first time was just right for them. Jia Yan fell quietly again. He's going for a second try. Old Li, tell me, my life is ruined. I am ruined. The first man was obviously even drunker, and he was about to cry when he said drunken words. Jia Yan's target is on this person. From the perspective of his infrared sensing eyes, this man's body was hot, and the smell of drunkenness was very attractive to him for some reason. It seems that the rumor among the people that people who drink alcohol are more likely to attract mosquitoes is quite well founded. While the two were wandering there and talking, neither of them noticed that a male Anopheles sinensis, which was much larger than the average mosquito, landed lightly on the middle-aged man who was half bald. On the back of the neck. Bang bang, bang bang. Jia Yan felt that his tubular artery-shaped heart was beating very hard at this time. This was because he was too nervous. If he is not careful, this bald man will slap him. If his fate is not good, he will die without a burial place. Fortunately, this man was very drunk. Jia Yan lay on his neck, 6 powerful legs desperately grabbing his skin. If you look at the human skin enlarged, it is just a ravine, and there are many pores on it. Jia Yan's fully evolved long legs can easily grasp the surface of the skin. Without further ado. Brother, I don't know whether you will destroy my little brother in this life, but my previous life has been destroyed. And in order to survive in this life, I can only drink your blood. I'm sorry. At least, I won't. What kind of disease could I pass on to you? Jia Yan was very professional and ethical, so he silently said sorry in his heart. Then he slowly stretched out his mouth part. Success or failure depends on now. Mosquitoes suck blood and break through the skin mainly by relying on the upper and lower jaws at the front of their mouth parts. The upper and lower jaws need a lot of strength to cut through the skin and pierce the blood vessels. Male mosquitoes cannot suck blood. In addition to having slightly smaller and weaker mouthparts compared to females, one of the reasons is the severe degeneration of the upper and lower jaws of the mouthparts. But Jia Yan doesn't think that his strength is inferior to that of a female mosquito. So he's going to give it a try. After adjusting your posture and preparing your upper and lower jaws for exertion, Jia Yan aimed his mouthpart at the man's skin and pierced it gently. To be continued. I have to thank you again today. 2 book friends actually rewarded it. The book friend Mao even swiped the screen. Haha, I like it. By the way, all the highlights in the book review section have been used up, so I can't add more highlights to the excellent reviews this month. I'm really sorry. But I will respond to every book friend's comments carefully. Now I ask everyone to give me some favorites and recommendations to support me. Thank you very much. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 9. When the mouthpart was pierced, Jia Yan was stunned. The mouthparts are straight from the middle, Bent. What happened? The upper and lower jaws have not yet started to work together, so they cannot even take the first step. But it's impossible. No matter how bad it is, it's impossible for it to bend like this. Jia Yan was puzzled. As a relatively powerful male mosquito, let's not talk about how strong his current body is. Just talk about ordinary male mosquitoes. Although they are said to be unable to break human skin, in fact, their mouthparts are also very terrifying. No matter how bad it is, it won't bend just by pushing it casually. Why is my stick so useless? It's too weak and can't be inserted at the critical moment. It bends as soon as it is pushed in. 5555. Jia Yan wanted to cry. Ahem, it seems that saying stick is a bit ambiguous, right? Well, it's the mouth parts. No matter how bad my mouth parts are, they can't bend so easily. They can't even compare to those of ordinary males. What the hell is this? You've been training in vain for so many days. Jia Yan listlessly left the man's neck and flew towards the sky. Wait a minute, I know why. Flying more than 2 meters in the air, Jia Yan was suddenly startled and thought of a possibility. He was so annoyed that he wanted to pat his stupid head. It's only been less than an hour since I emerged from pupa and turned into a mosquito. My mouth parts are completely in the tender state of just growing up. How can it pierce human skin, and how can it not bend? When I saw the little boy just now, he seemed to still remember him. How could he forget about it now? It's so stressful to be so nervous. It's really crazy. No way, it seems that at least tonight, I'm going to risk finding some plants and sucking their juices to spend the night. Wait until the mouthparts are completely hard tomorrow and try to suck blood again. It's just a pity that such a good blood-sucking opportunity was missed like this. Tell me, have I lived in vain? I have lived in vain. At this time, the drunk man at his feet suddenly roared for some reason. Jia Yan was so frightened that he shrank. Why don't you make such a loud voice and scare the mosquitoes to death? This bald guy is so drunk, he's like crazy. He rolled his eyes at the bald middle-aged man, spread his wings, and was about to leave. It's impossible to suck blood anyway, so there's no need to waste time here. You've lived in vain, haven't you? I think your life has been in vain. If you have the ability to say this, don't cry. Let's see if you still dare to say it. Let's see if you still dare to say it. Snapped. 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 Jia Yan stared at the two people below in stunned silence. It was going well just now, but after just a few words, the fight suddenly broke out. My life has been in vain. Lao Li, you kid, beat me again. I will jump into the river. The bald man's nose was bleeding after being punched by old Li. The blood fell to the ground drop by drop, and he covered his nose and peed wildly. Such a big northeastern man was bursting with tears. Brother. Old Li, who was beating people, suddenly hugged the bald drunk man in a bear hug. Brother. I also know that you are suffering. Don't be afraid, no matter what the hardship, we brothers will go through it together. Don't you dare say that you jump into the river, brother. I'm going to beat you, aren't I afraid that you will do something stupid? My good brother. Ah. Lao Li, I knew you were really good to me. Now it's better. The two drunk northeastern men who had just finished fighting hugged each other and cried together. Horse. That makes the listener sad and makes the listener cry. Comma. Jia Yan stared blankly at the two drunkards and expressed that he really couldn't understand what part of the drama was being performed. However, when he saw the bald drunk man's blood slipping out of his nose and falling to the ground drop by drop, he immediately screamed in his head. Blood. This kid was like seeing the most valuable treasure in the world, rushing towards the nearest blood stain. Buzz buzz. No matter what drama you put on, this blood is what I need most. No matter what you do, It doesn't matter to me even if you do bye Shen and my little brother. Just have this blood. Jia Yan's eyes were bright, and he used his fastest speed to stop at the largest blood stain. He stuck out his mouthpart and inserted it into the blood. Hurry before it is absorbed by the cement floor. Although, the bald man's nosebleed looks a little disgusting. But now that things have turned into mosquitoes, is it interesting to still pay attention to trivial matters? The smell of blood is simply the best delicacy in the world to Jia Yan. He can't control that much, he simply can't wait. Suck. Suck it hard. The next moment, the strong male mosquito was completely stunned. What does this feel like? Cool. So cool. So cool. I have never experienced this taste. It's like the refreshing sweet spring water, or like the fragrant and simple century-old cellar, which makes people fascinated and has endless aftertaste. The blood slips into the mouth and flows into the organs. There are only two words to explain that feeling. Jia Yan almost shouted, "Okay. Drink." However, he does not have the vocal ability to roar. Hurry, suck it all up. His internal organs, which he had worked hard to train since the time when he was using larvae, were sucking hard with strong suction. A ball of blood was suddenly sucked up in less than 10 seconds. Brother, look at it. Such a little mosquito is trying hard to live. A big man like you has to work hard to live, you know. Suddenly, the voice of old Li came from above Jia Yan's head. Jia Yan's whole body suddenly stiffened. His stomach became round as it sucked blood, and his head was raised stiffly. I saw two men who were crying and hugging each other just now, looking at his body lying on the ground with drunken eyes. You guys are playing with your Meng Jiangme crying at the Great Wall, what do you want me to do? Facing the cold eyes of the two supergiants, Jia Yan broke into a cold sweat. Unable to bear the huge fear, he was so frightened that he flapped his wings and flew into the night sky. Look, I scared people away. Go home, go home. Lao Li. You still haven't paid back the 100 yuan you owed me for the last time we played cards. You. You were about to jump into the river just now. If I hadn't held you back, you would have jumped. What? What are you talking about? I'm going to jump into the river. Jia Yan left quickly without looking back. These two drunken uncles are so scary. Rough, heroic, and even drunk with such personality, he is worthy of being from the northeast. But Jia Yan also had a feast of blood, even though it was the unsightly one. Well, uncle's nosebleed. But I still have to thank them. Brother's nosebleed tastes really good, thank you brother. Goodbye brother. Buzz buzz. The male Anopheles sinensis, whose stomach was full of blood, quickly left the scene of the crime. After seeing two living treasures and sucking a full meal of blood, he now wanted to find a safe place to rest. Then wait for dawn and find a way to go to Shanghai. Wait. Although I still have many unresolved situations. There may be many unforeseen difficulties ahead. However, I believe that if I walk step by step with my own strength, I will definitely be able to find you soon. Wash my neck and wait. At night, on the balcony of an ordinary home, a large male Anopheles sinensis mosquito stayed in a dark and windless safe corner, snoring quietly there. What's surprising is that this is clearly a male Anopheles mosquito, but its belly is round. Through the slightly transparent new exoskeleton, you can see obvious red blood flowing inside. When did male mosquitoes start sucking blood? Of course, what many people don't know is that it's not that male mosquitoes don't drink blood, it's just that they don't have the conditions to do so. If you put a male mosquito in front of a plasma that can suck blood without piercing the skin, they will still happily suck it. For example, the male Anopheles mosquito that Jia Yan Reborn picked up a delicious meal yesterday and nearly choked him to death. Fortunately, no one saw the round belly of this male mosquito. When the sky was getting slightly brighter, the belly of Jia Yan, a huge male mosquito, was already quite deflated. On the contrary, the exoskeleton of his body became brighter, and even the slender and delicate mouthparts became stronger. It's no longer the not strong state before, ahem, well, not hard, it seems like nothing is right no matter what I say. Anyway, it's quite stiff and hard, and you can try inserting it. It's just too detailed. Jia Yan felt very sad. It would be better if it were thicker. Wait until the first ray of sunlight hits this balcony. The male mosquito spreads its wings slightly, and its skeleton seems to have been reshaped, becoming completely more majestic from the inside out. He spread his wings and flew out from this person's balcony. It's safe to hide in a human's home. I had a good and peaceful sleep this night. Jia Yan's body was bathed in the sun, while he was vigilantly observing the sparrows that were hunting in the morning, while flying close to the wall. Blood is really fun. Jia Yan was extremely satisfied with his body that had finally taken shape after a night of nourishment. All thanks to the help of those blood last night. For mosquitoes, the best nutrient is blood. This is also a coincidence. After it emerges from the pupa and becomes a mosquito, it needs a lot of nutrients to support the formation of its young bones. If you really suck plant juices or flower dew, the nutrients in those things won't be enough to maximize your body's improvement. As a result, someone gave him a pillow when he was sleeping. Last night, the bald brother gave him the gift he needed most at the time. Jia Yan couldn't help but sincerely praise him. That punch from Lao Li was so good. The bald brother's nosebleeds also squirt beautifully. Thank you very much. Jia Yan was flying slowly on the road. Those who want to go to the county seat, hurry up and get on the bus. We will drive in 10 minutes. Those who want to go to the county seat, hurry up. We will drive soon. To be continued. Everyone is so enthusiastic. Last night and this morning, several book friends gave me rewards. The brothers Tiger Who Eats Pigs and Tugusin were both rewarded with 100 starting coins. Real rich people don't want to explain, haha. The book friends of one season / another silence, like the brothers Date Mao, came to reward and slaughter the edition. With your support, Baiyu feels that my thoughts are so smooth that I can't stop writing, ha ha ha. Now I still ask for collections, recommendations, and rewards. Just do what you can. It's not easy for everyone to make money, right? Now we are only ranked 31st on the public author list. This ranking is too hard to win. Help Baiyu get higher, so you can show off to your real relatives and friends, right? He. So if you have favorites or recommendation votes, please help vote for Baiyu. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 10. Suddenly a shouting sound reached Jia Yan's ears. Not far away, an old-fashioned minibus that looked a little shabby was parked at the entrance of the street. The conductor on the car shouted loudly. That's it? Jia Yan's eyes lit up and he controlled his body to get closer to the minibus that was about to drive. He made the decision yesterday to take a ride all the way to Shanghai. It is simply impossible for ordinary mosquitoes to travel from such a long distance in northern Liaoning to Shanghai, a city on the central coast of China, spanning thousands of kilometers. But for Jia Yan, this thing is not impossible. Even simpler than humans. His method is to take advantage of the car. Because it is a mosquito, he does not need to buy a ticket and can take any vehicle at will. As long as he is careful, he can do this. It's impossible for a conductor to shout when he passes by, "Mr. Mosquito, you haven't bought a ticket yet, right?" Jia Yan quietly approached the minibus. There were already many people sitting in the minibus. Each of these people seemed to be simple town residents, and most of them were smiling. After all, they were going to the county town. For these townspeople, it was also a trip to the city. The window in the back is open, Jia Yan floated around and found that there was no one in the last row of the minibus, and the window was also open. Go in, he quickly controlled his body and carefully flew into the window. After entering the window, the first thing is not to look outside. Instead, he quickly got into the crack of the car seat, then tightly grabbed the bottom of the car seat with his 6 feet, and hid his whole body upside down under the seat. Based on so many years of experience as a human being, this place should be the safest. Sir, why are you free to go to the city today? Are you going to see your grandson again? Yes, yes, it seems that I haven't seen my grandson for almost a month. I feel panicked. Big brother, why are you going to the city? Come sit here and let us brothers have a good chat. Hey, Xiaomin, I'll go to the county town in a moment. How about I go to your school to find you when school is over? There were many people in the car and it was very noisy. Jia Yan hid in the car and almost died from the noise. Male mosquitoes have more sensitive ears than females. They have 2 long tentacles on their heads, which are units similar to human ears. The sound vibrates through the air and is received by these 2 sensitive tentacles, so the mosquito can hear the sound. But now the noise of a group of humans very close by made Jia Yan's tentacles sway constantly and made the mosquitoes die. However, Jia Yan also received a lot of information during this period. For example, the county-level city called Changtu where he is located is a place in northern Liaoning close to the provincial capital Junction. This place is very close to the same Ism country on the other side of the Yalu River. And there are some specialties, so the trade is doing pretty well, so that the family background of these villagers is pretty good. Listening to these people chattering, I'm really jealous that Wang Meizi of Laosiping married a beautiful Korean girl without spending any money at all. He also said that the economy in Changtu County is improving now, so should he consider buying a house in the county? Last year the heating pipe broke and it froze to death in the middle of the night. The exotic chat content made Jia Yan listen with relish. Soon, Jia Yan found that there were 2 beauties with slender legs sitting on the back seat where he was. The faces of these 2 little hotties cannot be seen, only they are wearing hot pants, exposing their white legs. Wow, Nini, look, I have gained 2 more fans. Awesome. The underwear photos you uploaded yesterday must be so beautiful. I will upload 2 more next time. Showing more flesh will definitely surpass yours. 2 narcissistic silly girls. Just listening to these 2 sentences, Jia Yan can determine the attributes of these 2 girls. At the same time, he decided to filter out the next topics of these 2 idiots because he was worried that they would lower his IQ as well. Soon, 10 minutes passed in the noise. Although this minibus may look very shabby, it is quite punctual. When the time was up, the minibus started to move slowly with a not so pleasant engine roar. Goodbye, the town where I was born. Goodbye, my cozy little nest. Jia Yan felt a little inexplicably sad. At this time, the car body began to shake violently. Holy shit! It's so shaken. Jia Yan, who was hanging upside down under the car seat, suddenly lost his composure. The car started to shake, and he could hardly hold onto the car seat with his 6 feet. Fortunately, he had enough exercise during his time as a mosquito, and his current male mosquito body has become stronger. His 6 long legs dug tightly into the car seat to prevent him from falling off. The car swayed for more than 20 minutes, and then seemed to turn onto a broad road. The shaking immediately weakened a lot, which finally allowed Jia Yan, who was tired of dealing with it, to calm down. It's probably a provincial highway or a national highway. He took a long breath. He swore that he didn't want to do the country road just now. Not to mention mosquitoes, even people sitting on the seats might be overturned. Jia Yan estimated that the passengers in the car were also jolted by the jolts. The lively chatting scene before disappeared, except for an occasional conversation or 2. He took advantage of the fact that everyone was probably tired and moved his body quietly. The two girls on the seats were indeed just as Jia Yan guessed. They were obviously 17 or 18-year-old girls, but they both had slightly blonde hair. To be honest, although their appearance cannot be said to be ugly, they can't hide their rusticity. Everyone is scrolling through their phones with their heads down, and they still claim to have fans? Jia Yan said, haha, this is either a prank or a man who wants to do something he likes with them. But that's none of his business. Jia Yan looked out the window and looked at the scenery. Outside is the plain that is unique to northeast China. You can't see the horizon at a glance, the horizon is just a line. Of course, in the eyes of mosquitoes with extremely poor eyesight, these scenes are just a blur of light and shadow. However, Jia Yan, who has long been accustomed to this kind of vision, used his own set of experiences to summarize how to see things in the distance. For example, those great things should be distant mountains. Of course, there are not many mountains in this plain area, and the occasional few are not too high. Anyway, the scenery outside the window makes people feel relaxed and happy. Jia Yan's hometown is in the mountainous area of Jiangnan. It can be said that he has never seen similar scenery. Everything here makes his heart a little excited. It's just a pity that my eyesight is really bad. If my eyesight recovers one day, I will definitely enjoy seeing these beautiful scenery again. Jia Yan felt sorry in his heart. He had wanted to travel across the country before, but now, maybe with his mosquito body, this dream might be easier to realize. Thinking about it this way, turning into a mosquito is not all a bad thing. During the next journey, Jia Yan peeked out to see the scenery many times. He also knew that it was dangerous, but when he saw the longed-for scenery, he really couldn't control himself. During this period, he was also thinking about something. He felt that life was wonderful. A month ago, he was living a peaceful college life in a coastal city 1 or 2,000 kilometers away. But now, he has become a male Anopheles mosquito, experiencing all kinds of wind and rain and dangers, from the initial resistance of becoming an insect body, to now fully accepting his fate. Why was he reborn, and why was he reborn as a child? Jia Yan feels that he may not understand this until his death. The magic of life is really mysterious. So there are some things you need to keep an eye on. When you have food to eat, don't complain about anything else, just eat the food with gratitude. When you see beautiful scenery, don't throw it aside. You should enjoy these treasures of nature. Then, you will find that life is more beautiful. Jia Yan suddenly had many insights. As for why he knew that he was still a college student a month ago? Why wasn't it a year or even a few years ago? It's actually very simple, because Jia Yan already knows the specific time from other people's mouths. He discovered that the day he was reborn as a child was superimposed on the day his human body died. In other words, it is still the year of 2015 when he died, and even less than a month has passed. A month ago I was still a good college boy. But now, a month later, he not only came to this northern Liaoning city with different customs, but his body has also transformed into an inhuman male mosquito. If someone is struggling with the fact that life is not beautiful, then come and see me to ensure that he regains his confidence. Haha. Jia Yan laughed at himself inwardly. While he was thinking about his thoughts, he looked at the scenery. Of course, this is really dangerous and is very likely to be discovered by passengers. But fortunately, the danger did not really happen. The fellow villagers in the car were not interested in the scenery of their hometown at all. They were all falling asleep after sitting in the car for a long time. Almost another 30 minutes passed. In the scenery Jia Yan looked at, there were suddenly more houses. Houses began to appear in sight. Dear passengers, we have arrived at Changtu County. If you want to get off, get ready, the conductor's aunt shouted at the car door with a loud voice. The county seat has arrived. Jia Yan also recovered from his trance. It can be said that he experienced some changes in his mood during this drive. In the previous lonely life, time was too tight and I pushed myself too hard, so that even today I haven't sorted out my mentality. After this quiet short journey, he finally figured out some things and was no longer so confused. Of course, the basic plan of revenge has not changed at all. Okay, I'll get off too. Seeing many passengers in the car preparing their luggage and getting out of the car, Jia Yan looked around for a moment and saw that the scenery outside the window turned into a busy city street. He quickly flew up, then flew directly through the open window and flew out. To be continued.